All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Free Palestine Summer Series. My name is Emma Abada, and I'm honored to welcome Dr. Yousef Aljamal, who currently serves as the Gaza Coordinator for the Palestine Activism Program at the American Friends Service Committee, a historic peace and justice organization founded by Quakers in 1917 that works worldwide to promote nonviolence, support humanitarian relief, and advocate for social, economic, and political justice. As a Palestinian refugee originally from the Nuseirat refugee camp in the Gaza Strip, Dr. Al-Jamal brings both deeply personal insight and scholarly expertise to his advocacy work. He earned his PhD in Middle Eastern Studies from the Middle East Institute at Sakarya University in Turkey, and he is also a non-resident senior scholar at the Hashim Sani Center for Palestine Studies, located at the University of Malaya in Malaysia. Dr. Al-Jamal is a prolific commentator and writer whose work has appeared in a range of respected publications. He has contributed to and authored essays in outlets including In These Times, The Progressive, Plus 972 Magazine, and others, offering compelling perspectives on Gaza, refugee rights, and the ongoing humanitarian crisis and genocide. Thank you again, Dr. Al-Jamal, for being here with us. We read your recent article about how your sister's whole family in Gaza, except your niece Noor, was killed by an Israeli airstrike just a few days ago. We are so horrified and heartbroken with you. We want to take a moment to acknowledge them and honor their lives as the divine, precious beings they were. Can you tell us about your family and early life in Gaza and how it shaped who you are today?
Thank you very much for having me today. I grew up in Nuseirat refugee camp in 1948. My extended family ended up in the Gaza Strip. That's where my father comes from. And the other part of my extended family ended up in the West Bank. So my family was divided into two groups since Israel was established in 1948, and we lived through segregation and separation for 77 years. The Israeli genocide in Gaza is just the last episode, I would say, in a long history of separation that my family suffered from due to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. Um, so in 1967, and ironically, when Israel captured the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, my family was able to physically meet, and that's how my parents met, and they got married, and I came to life in the refugee camp in Gaza. And since 1948, we have never seen a normal life in Gaza. We grew up in a refugee camp. The population of Nuseirat refugee camp was about 100,000 in 2023 when the genocide started. I remember growing up in Nuseirat and playing on the streets of Nuseirat with other children and lacking, parks to play in, lacking a normal life and listening to Israeli drones over around 24/7. That's my life in Gaza. So as I said, we've never lived a normal life. And even before 2023, I lost my sister, my other sister, my other brother to the siege. So Palestinians suffered from the lack of permits to receive medical attention because Israel rendered the healthcare system dysfunctional, and we needed to apply for permits when we wanted to have surgeries or visit family in the West Bank. So this is the kind of life I remember in Gaza.
Wow, so you have to apply for permits for medical care when you're in Gaza?
Absolutely. So, and this is all before 2023 when the genocide started. Israel destroyed much of the healthcare infrastructure in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, but especially in Gaza. So Palestinians with chronic diseases, especially cancer patients, needed to apply for Israeli permits in order to be able to have treatment. And this treatment was either available in the West Bank or Israel itself. And in order to cross from Gaza to the West Bank and Israel, Palestinians needed Israeli permits. And Israel used this regime of permits to collectively punish the people of Gaza. Sometimes there are stories, horrible stories around this regime of permits where Israel would give cancer patients a permit to have the first chemotherapy session, but not the second one. And then they would blackmail them into collaboration against their own people. Many people would choose to die in Gaza waiting for Israeli permits rather than to become collaborators against their own people. Hundreds of people lost their lives. My sister was only the first victim of this policy of collective punishment that started even before 2006, 2007. Um, and after her, there were hundreds of people who lost their lives this way. So that's just another form of slow death in Gaza. That was the norm. And when the genocide started, things have become very fast. Like the amount of death and destruction became very fast, but we never, you know, lacked this Israeli policy. We always had it there. It was just very slow over the years.
Yes, I understand. Can you explain a little bit of the differences and similarities between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, since you've had family in both?
Yeah, so for example, that was not only applicable to patients, but also to families. It took my mom 12 years to get an Israeli permit to visit her own family in the West Bank just because she moved to Gaza and she changed her address to Gaza. She became a Gaza resident in Israel's eyes. That's like there are different sets of IDs given to Palestinians by Israel. So Palestinians from the West Bank have a different ID than Palestinians from Gaza or Jerusalem or Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship. And the first of the worst ID one could have is the Gaza ID in Israel's eyes. So my mother wasn't aware of the implications of changing her address to Gaza when she did upon marriage, and this means that she needed a permit every time she wanted to visit her hometown in the West Bank, and it took her 12 years at some point to get a permit. Um, in the West Bank, you have many Israeli settlements that we only had them in Gaza up until 2005 when Israel withdrew from Gaza. In the West Bank, you have more checkpoints. You have about 700 checkpoints. Israeli settler violence, land confiscation. But still, people can move in and out in a way or another. Their fences, gates, walls, they manage to get in and out with difficulty. In Gaza, we've been placed under a medieval siege since 2006, 2007, and it was very difficult for people to get in and out of Gaza. This has always been the case. Freedom of movement in Gaza was very, very difficult. Even accessing medical care was very difficult. And you would have Israeli bombardment every time and then, an Israeli campaign, military campaign that targets Gaza every couple of years, destroying more buildings, killing more people, hundreds of people. 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So you would have more colonial violence in Gaza, less freedom of movement, less access to medical care. So the Israeli settler colonial project in Gaza, I would say, was more violent, and it was faster in terms of destruction, more industrial compared to the West Bank. But again, like having family both in Gaza and the West Bank tells you it's the same colonial policy. It just takes different forms and faces depending on the phase. And I think if Israel is allowed to get away with what's doing in Gaza now, the genocide, it will be just a matter of time before the same thing will happen in the West Bank as well.
Yes, we have those fears as well about the West Bank and the escalating violence that we've seen both from the state of Israel and the settlers, as you described. Um, could you share a personal story that illustrates some of the daily realities with that you've experienced either in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank?
Um, there's a story that I will always remember about my dad, who I lost during the genocide because of the lack of medicine and medical treatment. This is even, like there are thousands and thousands of Palestinians who lost their lives during the genocide who are not accounted for. They needed medical care just because Israel did not kill them directly. They're not in the lists of people who lost their lives uh, during the genocide. So my dad needed medical care, and he lost his life because this medical care was not available. He needed medicines that were not available in Gaza. But just to give you an idea about the kind of harsh reality I grew up in. So I grew up in a place called Block A. That used to be a British prison during the First World War. That was also the site of a camp for Greek refugees who ended up in Gaza in 1942 during the Second World War. They ended up in Gaza because their islands were occupied by Nazi Germany. And history repeats itself. Now Palestinians end up in Greece seeking protection um, and a better life. Uh, just like 80 years, 82 years down the road, it's the same story. So in Block A, that was the neighborhood where I grew up. That was also a, a war prison, a British war prison, where Ottoman soldiers were brought during the First World War. And the way in and out of the refugee community is was actually through the actual gate of the prison. So I grew up in what used to be a prison, in the biggest open air prison in the world, the Gaza Strip. And again, I still remember the gate in and out of that was the only gate in and out of the refugee community where I grew up, called Block A, was actually the gate of an actual prison. And I remember Israeli soldiers being stationed there, and they would humiliate Palestinians coming in and out of the refugee community. And because it was the only way in and out, they would always station young soldiers armed to the teeth there to control people getting in and out. And one day they tried to humiliate my dad, who went back from work in Israel. So a lot of Palestinians were exploited as cheap laborers in Israel. And this was about in 1987, 88. So Israeli soldiers stopped my dad and they asked him to dance for them for entertainment. And he knew that if he said no, they would humiliate him, torture him, beat him, and even kill him. And they wanted to humiliate him in front of everybody in the neighborhood. Because on the other side, everybody he knew, his neighbors, was sitting in a cafe, listening to music and sipping some coffee, and they wanted him to dance in front of them so that they humiliate him. And he was smart enough, and he told them, "Yes, I will dance for you, but I want you to clap for me." So he needed some vibes. And the reason he wanted them to clap for him is because he wanted to uh, make sure that they're not using their guns. He wanted them to put off their guns. So they started clapping for him. They put off their guns aside, and he picked up his slippers and he ran away and he disappeared into an orange orchard nearby. There were all types of rumors. Of course, they became the joke of the refugee camp, but there were all types of rumors about his fate, and some people said he was killed, injured, etc. So my grandparents were worried. My grandmother was looking around for him, trying to locate him. She was crying, and at the time, there were no smartphones or stupid phones. He wasn't able to communicate with his family. So he went to the orange orchard. He climbed one of the high trees and he hid there until it was sunset time. And he had a very beautiful voice. So he went to a nearby mosque and he made the call for a prayer, sunset prayer. This is how his parents were able to tell that he was alive and kicking. And at night time, he returned back home. I mean, this is sometimes I would say a funny story, um, but it's very telling, very simple. This is how we grew up: daily humiliation, control. Our lives are used by soldiers for entertainment, but then we find a way. We and since then we've been dancing under occupation. I mean, it didn't change. It just got worse.
Wow. Wow. Do you all have any reactions, Addie, Kelly, or Jody, that, like you said, in in one hand, it's a little bit of a humorous story, and your dad sounds very witty, intelligent. But also I could feel myself kind of welling up with tears at just that kind of behavior, and seeing your family members and your father treated that way, or knowing that that's going on is awful.
And this is Jody. I want to tell you, you were raised right, and I respect and admire your father for his courage and the fact that he didn't, he was clever enough to not meet violence with violence, but to meet, as Emma said, violence with extreme intelligence. And I loved that he ended it with a call from the mosque, with the prayer that he was okay. And I also liked what you said about we're still dancing, but we're still as heroic as your dad was. So thank you for that profound story.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. So now I want to ask, how did you first get involved with activism and human rights work?
Like in Palestine, there are even people who do not like the word activist, because it's not something that you choose. It's something that you have to deal with because of the circumstances and conditions around you. So there are a lot of people who become journalists just because they wanted to tell their own story, the story of their people, their families, their friends, their neighbors. So everyone in Gaza is a journalist somehow. Once Israel targets a hospital, for example, the same as they did today, killing 16 people, including five journalists, uh, you will find people taking out their cameras, their phones, and recording the incident and reporting it to the outside world. Because if we don't, then we feel like we're betraying our own nation, our own people, our families, our neighbors. So basically, I'm telling the story of my neighbors, my family, my people. And as I said, we grew up under occupation. So the moment I became aware that I can do this, that I can write, that I can report, I did it. And there are tens of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of people who have done this over the years since 1948. So it's a moral obligation, it's a national duty. Um, it's an urge inside you. You cannot look away. You know what's happening. And I've seen a lot of people who visited Gaza for 1 week and it changed them forever. So, and I'm not someone who visited Gaza for 1 week. I grew up in Gaza. I have family in Gaza. So Gaza is my homeland, although it's my refugee camp, as I said. But still, this is what I know of Palestine. And I feel like I have to do this. I have to tell people. I have to speak up. I have to remind people. Again, we're not exception to history. I know this will change. There will come a day when these people who are being massacred in Gaza today will be honored, that Palestinians will see justice. I just pray that we see it within our lifetime. And I also hope that people will be saved rather than remembered after they're killed, because this is doable too. Uh, so instead of honoring the memory of children who get killed, let's prevent that now. Let's take action now. And I think that's exactly what people are doing. Journalists are doing. That's what I'm doing now, is that we're speaking up, hoping that telling these stories will bring about change that will end the suffering of people right now, not in the future when they're gone. We do not want to celebrate their memories when they're gone. We want to save them now. But if this is not possible, then we will honor their memories and we will push harder to save the lives of people, other people who might survive. Uh, so I've been doing this since, I would say, since I was 18 or 19, trying to write, meet people who come to Gaza, delegations, take them around Gaza, translate for them, tell stories, turning the stories of our ancestors, our friends, our neighbors into tales. As Dr. Rifat Lar'ir, who was my lecturer and a close friend of mine, said, if I must die, you must live to tell my story. Um, and especially if you're living outside, you have the privilege of doing that. You have access to the internet and you know the story. You have less risks, although you have also different struggles because you leave Gaza, but Gaza doesn't leave you. Um, but still, you have more access to storytelling, platforms, people, and you know the language. Then you just use these means, social media or online means, or you speak to mainstream media, or you write a story, um, hoping that it will change the hearts and minds of people. We know that a lot of people are on our side. We see it, really. That's not just a statement I say. I see it, really, I do. But we're just hoping that we will change the hearts and minds of politicians, because that's the end game at the end of the day, is to bring about political change. So we have the streets with Gaza, we have people with Gaza, we have 100,000 people who took to the streets yesterday in Australia and every day in the world. But we need to get politicians to speak. And for the first time in my life, I've seen politicians. This is not enough yet because the United States hasn't moved yet. The political leadership elite in the United States hasn't moved yet. But elsewhere in the world, I've seen politicians speaking up or saying they're going to recognize Palestine or honoring the people of Gaza, criticizing the Netanyahu government for their actions. But again, it took us a genocide to get to this point.
Yes, yes. I want to I want to just echo that sentiment of the whole reason we were organizing this Free Palestine Summer Series was because we've been protesting every Saturday since October 2023. And we wanted to do more to mobilize and activate our community to be calling our Congress people every day, demanding a ceasefire, an end of the occupation, an arms embargo, and a dismantling of the Israeli government as the horrifying colonial terrorizing entity that it is. And so we've been really, that's one of the reasons we were doing this series, was because we want Americans specifically knowing that the power that the American government has in this situation, it's essential that American citizens are pushing our politicians to move on this subject, to change on this subject, which historically the United States government has only ever supported the Israeli government. And we really want to see that change immediately, like you said, because we don't want to be celebrating the lives or mourning and honoring the lives of people lost. We want to save lives. That is possible right now. And as you said, even just today, we saw on social media another airstrike hitting a group of journalists, I believe in Khan Yunis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want that to stop as quickly as possible to save as many lives as possible, because each one is sacred, is an entire universe. And so that's I just wanted to echo that sentiment that you shared, and that's a big part of why we're doing what we're doing here as well. Um, I want to follow that up and ask what led you to work with the American Friends Service Committee, and what does your role as the Gaza coordinator involve?
So I got to know about the Quakers and the AFSC from a Palestinian elder called Ahmed al-Hajj in 2011. That was the first time I heard of the Quakers. He himself ended up as a refugee in Gaza in 1948 and received aid from the AFSC in 1948 after his village was ethnically cleansed. So they were besieged in another village nearby, and he was with his mom, and his mom told him to go to Gaza to attend his high school because she wanted someone from the family to survive and to carry the name of that family. So he crawled on the ground for 3 kilometers. It was all muddy, and he made it to Gaza and he went to his high school in 1948. In 2024, January, he lost his life in the north of Gaza at the age of 90, also under siege, bombardment. He refused to be displaced to the south. He refused to become a refugee for the second time in his life. And his story is very unique. He also refused to um, buy a house in Gaza because for him, Gaza is not his home. He always wanted to return back to his village in what is today Israel. So when the Great March of Return broke out in 2018, he was among the first to participate. And he lived his entire life in a rental house. That's the story of Gaza. It's a story of refugees. 70% of people in Gaza are refugees. So in 2014, I contributed a short story to Gaza Writes Back that was edited by the late Palestinian intellectual Dr. Rifat Al. And Rifat, Rawan Yari, and I traveled to the United States to promote Gaza Writes Back, and we visited 10 different cities. We met a lot of people at community centers, Quaker houses, universities, churches, synagogues. We went all over the place. We talked about Gaza and fiction and how fiction can change people. And the speaking tour was very successful. It was co-sponsored by the AFSC and Just Word Books that published the book. And over the years, I stayed in touch with the Quakers, with the AFSC. So in 2022, 2023, I also went on speaking tours with the AFSC to talk about another book called Light in Gaza. And after the genocide started in Gaza, I started working as the Gaza Coordinator for the AFSC. And we focus on storytelling and advocacy. So we're trying to move the US Congress to take policies that will change the lives of people in Gaza and end the occupation of Gaza and Palestine in general, to allow Palestinians to live in dignity. So we have the Action Hour, a weekly activity where we gather online from across the United States and we speak to Congress people. Each one speaks to their Congress people and ask specific asks in relation to Palestine and Gaza. Again, I write articles, I publish articles about Gaza, I focus on storytelling, I interview people, tell their stories, and publish these articles. We try again to move politicians, but also expand our solidarity networks. We reach out to more people. We have the apartheid-free community initiative. We have more than 750 people who signed on into the pledge, and it's expanding every day. We also have a couple of books that we worked on that documents the experiences of Palestinians in Gaza. So I mentioned the speaking tour of Gaza Rise Back, but also Light in Gaza. That was published by Haymarket, and recently we also published Displaced in Gaza that has 27 stories of displaced people in Gaza, different backgrounds and ages, telling their stories of displacement. And we published the book initially in Malaysia, and this year we published it in the United States. We're turning it into an audiobook, and there are different translations of the book. Even before launching the book in about a week from now, the book sold 3,000 copies. There are 300 back orders. So there's so much interest. Even Light in Gaza was available for a free download by Haymarkets. About 50,000 people downloaded the PDF version of the book. More than 10,000 copies were sold. So people are interested in Gaza. They want to learn about Gaza. And I think the best way to do this is to let people in Gaza speak for themselves. Because this is a problem we had in the past, the permission to narrate, as Palestinian intellectual Edward Said says, Palestinians were not allowed to speak their minds. And what we do, we just try to help them tell their own stories. And Palestinians are very smart. The majority of people in Gaza are educated. Literacy rates are the highest in the Middle East, with 97.5% of people in Gaza are able to read and write. There are a lot of educated people, professionals, engineers, educators in Gaza, and we just need to give them the platform. So this is what we do. We give them the platform and we try to make some noise within the US using different means, speaking to Congress, organizing webinars, sit-ins, conferences, publishing stories and books. We're building a movement here. We are part of a larger movement.
Yes, yeah, it was very important for us that we highlight Palestinian voices in this educational series. And that's definitely one of our values is we don't want to speak for Palestinians. We want to shine the light on your voices. We want to amplify the voices, and it's our job as people of privilege in the US and outside of Palestine to do that, to put the light on you all so you can tell your story and tell us what you need. Yeah, so in that vein, what are the most pressing challenges facing Palestinians in Gaza today, if you could speak on that?
Palestinians in Gaza lost their homes, lost their families. They're being starved. There is no water. no food, no cash, and humanitarian aid is being weaponized by Israel. So the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that was established by Israel in an attempt to replace UNRWA, which is another crime against Palestinians because UNRWA is the last standing symbol, UN symbol for Palestinian refugees. These sites have turned into killing zones. Every day, dozens of Palestinians get killed while trying to line up to get aid. So Israeli bombardments continue. 90% of homes in Gaza have been destroyed. Israel is trying to push more than 1 million Palestinians who live in Gaza City and the north of Gaza into the south. Israel is destroying hundreds of homes right now as we speak, using a huge amount of explosives to push people who remain in the north to the south. In the Zaytun neighborhood, the Shuja'iyya neighborhood, these are the eastern neighborhoods and central neighborhoods of Gaza City, Sabra neighborhood. Over the past week alone, Israel destroyed more than 800 homes in these neighborhoods, pushing more people to the south. They're shelling their neighborhoods. They're sending these robots with huge amounts of explosives into their neighborhoods and destroying them, forcing them to flee to the south. There is no food, no water. And I don't want to talk about prices in Gaza. Even now, the a kilo is about 2 pounds of flour costs around $4, and this is cheap. This is cheap compared to a month ago was about 120 Israeli shekels. So a month ago it was 100 times higher. Now it's 10 times higher the original price. So this is the kind of reality we're dealing with in Gaza. People hardly get any food. Every day, a dozen people pass away because of starvation. Um, More than 200 people lost their lives because of starvation, and the numbers are skyrocketing, rocketing every day. There are more people losing their lives, especially children, especially pregnant women who need nutrition. So we have a man-made disaster in Gaza. We've never seen this. Israel killed 5 journalists today. Total is 245 journalists who've been killed in Gaza since October 7. We just have rubble in Gaza, to be honest with you. That's what we have. No services, no water, and people did their best. It's been 2 years, almost 2 years of death and destruction and complicity at the same time. The world is not doing enough. World governments are not doing enough. They're interested more in shows. Airdrops are shows that kill people every day. These boxes fall on tents, on people, on children, and kill them. And then barely enough. Like sending a truck into Gaza is more beneficial in terms of quantity and quality than having a plane flying over Gaza and dropping aid. It's all about shows. And just to give you an idea, Israel said yesterday that they allowed chicken into Gaza for the first time. They allowed bad chicken that went bad. People couldn't eat it. And the prices were just crazy. A kilo of a chicken was sold for 140 shekels. I mean, in the past, I remember buying a kilo of chicken for 7 shekels. And it's bad. Again, this starvation is engineered, it's man-made, and it could end now if Israel allows thousands of aid trucks belonging to UNRWA stuck in Egypt and Jordan. That would end the starvation right now. It's very easy, very doable. But again, Netanyahu is weaponizing aid per the wishes of his right-wing ministers, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, to stop the people of Gaza and push them to surrender. That's the end game here. That's the goal.
Yeah, it could end immediately. And it's so frustrating and humiliating, like you shared earlier. It's humiliating to send spoiled chicken into a starving population. That is so psychologically cruel to do something like that to people who haven't had access to meat in months, if not almost 2 years.
I mean, that's not very much surprising to me because Israel did similar things in the past. Israeli settlers attacked aid trucks getting into Gaza and destroyed them and burned them. They have also organized barbecue parties next to Palestinian hunger strikers, prisons where Palestinian hunger strikers are held in the West Bank and Israel.
Yeah, we saw how even earlier, prior to the most recent blockade that started in March, prior to that, we saw Israelis protesting and blocking aid trucks back in 2023. Um, and yeah, it's been really horrifying to see all of that. Could you also speak to, when you describe these things going on in Gaza right now, I think for some of our audience, it's hard for them to even conceptualize and relate to what it's like when all of the sewer systems have been blown up and damaged, and where is everybody going to the bathroom, and how are they being displaced multiple dozens of times, moving and walking and having no access to fuel and being starving. Can you sort of speak to the resilience and maybe, how is somebody surviving this? Because we know that the resilience of the Palestinians is it's honorable. It shouldn't be necessary, but it's incredibly honorable, and their fight and their will to survive this is something I'm hoping you could speak to a little bit.
So, as I said, about 10% of homes are still standing. And if you have a standing house, you will have everybody in your extended family in that house. And that's why when Israel destroys one of these remaining houses, you hear of massacres that kills dozens of people because people have no other place to go to. But also you have people in the north of Gaza, like entire neighborhoods that have been completely destroyed, leveled to the ground, and extended families do not have a single standing house. So people built tents, and Israel didn't allow tents into Gaza for the past, I would say, 6, 7 months. Not a single tent entered Gaza. And these tents are worn out. But again, people have no other option but to survive. They stay next to the rubble of their homes. There are some initiatives on the ground where, donors build tents or tent cities for people. So there are people who live there, people who stay with their friends and family, extended family members, people who stay by the beach, people who stay in what used to be parks. We had a few of them in Gaza, or open spaces in Gaza, or people just living in 1/3 of a room that was part of a whole house that was destroyed. They just find a small spot for themselves and they live in these destroyed houses. It's very dangerous. Some of them collapse on them and kill them. And it's very dangerous because many of these uh, missiles that Israel fired into Gaza haven't exploded. I would say 15% of them. So you live literally next to a future explosion that might happen anytime. But again, you do not have any other option. And then Israel also attacks these tent cities. Just 2 days ago, they destroyed a whole tent city next to Al-Aqsa hospital in central Gaza. And I've seen the footage. It was horrible, like a huge explosion. And these tents were on fire. A lot of people were injured and killed. Um, So there is no safe place in Gaza. There is no alternative, I mean, ideal alternative for Palestinians there. So if you have family, you go there and you use the toilet, but then there is no water. Even if you have a standing house, having access to water is very difficult because there is no fuel. And with that fuel, you cannot run water wells. And many of these water wells were destroyed already. So it's layers of and layers of challenges. Maybe some people use the sea water, it's salty. Some people have access to solar panels, so they run some sort of electricity network and they can get access to water. But again, water itself is not accessible all the time. My family tell me that sometimes a week passes or 2 weeks pass without having a drop of water in the house. And it's the last standing house that my family has. I lost my own apartment. All of my sisters lost their homes. Um, and if you have money, you can buy water at a crazy price. If you have someone supporting you from outside, then you're more privileged than others. The majority of people do not have this line of support. And even if you have like tons of cash, I tell you, with these prices in Gaza, you will run out of cash, you will run out of money. So this is all engineered by Israel, so that people run out of cash, run out of money, and they become more dependent on Israel. So that they go to GHF, so that their plans of replacing UNRWA works. So starvation is engineered in many different ways. So this is how people manage, some people have solar panels, like my brother, for example, bought a solar panel system that was partially damaged after Israel destroyed a house. He went to the owners and he said, I can buy it from you, and he bought it. At the time, I thought that was a crazy decision because it was expensive, about $1,000. But he was right. This is how I communicate with them every day. This is how they get some sort of electricity. And there are some people who run these private businesses where they give you access to the internet or charge your phone if you pay a specific amount of money.
Wow. Yeah. It's we've been watching on social media people like Bisan and Motaz and Anas, who was just murdered by Israel a few weeks ago in Gaza City, and journalists like that. We've been following them and we've been seeing some of the things you were just describing and how essential even just a damaged solar panel can be a lifeline of survival and connection. It's yeah, I think it's hard for Americans a lot of the times, some Americans at least, to even begin to imagine and relate to what that must be like every day for, again, well over 600 days since this current escalation of the genocide began in October 2023. So I want to move on to my next question, which is that you hold a PhD in Middle Eastern Studies. Based on your lived experience in Gaza and your academic and professional background, how do you analyze the history and current reality of Palestine? How do factors like colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy, and global politics shape this context? And additionally, could you speculate what the political goals behind Al-Aqsa flood, the October 7th, were, and what might have been the political motivation for that action from your perspective?
So I think the question of Gaza, if we trace it back, it's a question of refugees, as I said. Um, and Israel has always viewed Gaza as a threat. There were attempts and plans, some of which are secret, to depopulate Gaza, starting from 1953, 54. It was a plan by UNRWA, in fact, to relocate some Palestinian refugees to northern Sinai. And build agricultural communities for them. There were also other plans, including a plan in 1969 introduced by Moshe Dayan, Israel's defense minister at the time, to send young people in Gaza on a one-way ticket to Latin America, Central and South America. Some people were sent to Latin America as part of this scheme, but it was exposed. The reason I'm telling you these stories is I want to center the question of Gaza, question of Palestine in the global context of exploitation, of class. If you look at Israel's plans in Gaza, they never liked Gaza, but Gaza is very important. It's overlooking the Mediterranean. It has gas, natural gas reserves, and it's very important for Israel. Again, it's a concentration of population, the majority of which are refugees. So they wanted to get rid of this population by starting an industrial scale genocide using sophisticated weapons. 100,000 tons of weapons have been dropped on Gaza. When we speak of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, each bomb was 15,000 tons. So what happened in Gaza is way worse than what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in terms of explosive power. But Israel did it slowly, a ton or two or three at a time, so that, the world would be fine with it. It's again another form of slow death. And when I say slow, it's slow compared to dropping a nuclear weapon on Gaza. And they've done it like in comparison. And if you combine all of these um, bombs and tons of explosive they dropped on Gaza altogether, we've seen that they've done it. Uh, and again, you have Trump who come up with real estate oriented solutions to Gaza. That's the definition of capitalism. He publishes a video with Elon Musk next to him before he broke up with Elon Musk, uh, promising to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. So it's about cash or milking Gaza, I would say, using these resources for Israel and the United States and Trump and his political economic circles. And this comes at the expense of refugees, very vulnerable people and communities who have been suffering under siege for decades. So again, their solution is another form of gentrification, and that's why you see this intersectional solidarity. What's happening in Hawaii, for example, in terms of gentrification in the United States, is connected to what's happening in Gaza. So this is the way we push people out of Gaza by gentrification and building all these fancy cities. And speaking to other countries, third countries, to receive Gazans. It's the same mentality that suggests that solving the issue of migration and migrants and refugees in the US is done by speaking to African countries that will receive them. That's the same mentality, as if people are commodities, their histories, their stories, their connection to the land is an item that could be sold and discussed in a very industrial way. Um, and that's why I see like a huge connection that Palestine has with all these issues. When we talk about Gaza, Gaza is only a testing field for weapons that will be used elsewhere in the world. And I remember an article from Haaretz, the newspaper in Israel, in 2014, saying that Israeli weapons sold like hot cake after being tested in Gaza. If you look at the US-Mexico border, Elbit system, which helped build the apartheid wall in the West Bank, said they can use their expertise that they use in the West Bank to help the United States prevent migrants from crossing the border. There are many examples where police departments, for example, from the US were trained in Israel. And all these security measures at airports. And so Gaza is a testing field, as I said, and if the genocide in Gaza is allowed to happen, it will happen elsewhere in different ways, different shapes. Israel is a monster that needs to be stopped. They will not stop in Gaza. They will move to the West Bank. They will get rid of Palestinians in Israel. They will expand to Lebanon and Syria. They're attacking countries everywhere in the Middle East. And Netanyahu is speaking of the idea of a greater Israel, that he's committed to the idea from a historical and spiritual point of view. And historical Israel, according, or greater Israel, according to him, includes parts of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, parts of Turkey, Lebanon, and Palestine. And of course, Egypt, parts of Egypt, the Sinai. So he will not stop there. And he's surrounded by a buffet of radical ministers, former convicted criminals like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, who are now, decision makers. They make the decisions in Israel at the highest levels.
Yeah. Yeah, we very much there is a perspective for sure that sees Israel as a military outpost for the US and the West in general, as a military outpost that serves the interests of the colonial countries of the West. Like you said, for the natural gas, potentially the Sinai Peninsula, and access to the canal there, and very strategic placement to be disrupting the region of Northern Africa and Western Asia and the Middle East, and disrupting all of those countries around occupied Palestine. And so, yeah, we very much can see that there's a bigger geopolitical intention at play. And this is very much connected to colonial powers wanting to exploit the global South and exploit people of different ethnicities, religions, races, for the gain of the capitalist classes in the West. And so thank you for speaking on that. And I know too that Palestinians have been trying many methods to resist this occupation, to push back. Like you mentioned, a few of them, the Great March of Return and different strategies. Can you speak to what the political intentions were for trying to resist in October?
So throughout history, Palestinians have engaged in about 14 to 15 uprisings, revolutions, since the British times up until now. About 12 of them were non-violent, and they were also crushed. Um, Palestinians in Gaza have been protesting, calling for an end to the siege. We have been telling the world at the AFSC and elsewhere with all these speaking tools, open Gaza to the world. The siege is not sustainable. There will come an explosion. But to be honest with you, I've never imagined that it will end up the way it did. I always thought that Palestinians will storm the border the same way they did with the Great March of Return. And even this was non-violent, and Israel still killed 350 people and injured 12,000 people. So Palestinians have tried everything to end the siege, end the humiliation, end the occupation, the control of Palestinian lives. Nothing worked. And I mean, according to Hamas itself, the goal of October 7 was to capture Israeli soldiers and exchange them for Palestinian prisoners, and to destroy the Gaza battalion that has been in charge of besieging Gaza in the Israeli military. Um, but then what came later, Israel made use of this attack that never happened in the history of Palestine. It was always the other way around, Israel attacking Palestinians, as I mentioned, 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, and all the way leading to October 7. Israel turned that into an excuse to carry out ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza. Um, so that's the end goal of the Palestinian people, is to have freedom. You know, they have the right to end the occupation and to live in freedom in a free country of their own. So that they could visit each other without an Israeli permit, so that they could have a surgery without an Israeli permit, so that they could have a full day of electricity. My youngest brother is 20, and he only saw a full day of electricity at the age of 19 when he left Gaza after the genocide. Since he was born in 2006, Israel destroyed the only power plant in Gaza. So we never lived a normal life, as I said, and Palestinians always tried everything with the peace process, with the Oslo Accords, with the PLO, with Fatah, and Israel always claimed there is no Palestinian partner for peace. Palestinians decided, okay, we will recognize Israel on 78% of what used to be historic Palestine. I've never seen any liberation movement in history that does so, but Israel still said, no, that's not enough. We will not give you a state of your own on 22% of your historic homeland in exchange for peace. They want every single inch of the land. So Palestinians tried violence, non-violence, protests, conferences, peace negotiations. The US has been brokering peace talks since 1993, and nothing worked. I mean, Israel has to be forced into a solution rather than waiting for Israel, because the more we wait, Israel will confiscate more land that is supposed to be part of Palestine and push more Palestinians out of it. This solution has to be enforced on Israel through sanctions, through recognition, and through accountability. Israel will not wake up one day and say, oh, we're sorry, we're going to change our policies towards the Palestinians.
Yes. Yeah. Can you also speak to the Palestinian hostages or political prisoners, many, if not most of whom are held without charge, and even many of whom are children? Because you briefly mentioned that. Could you go into that a little bit more?
So since 1967, about 1 million Palestinians have been incarcerated by Israel. At any given time after 2000, you would find 6, 7, 8,000 Palestinian political prisoners in Israeli jails. At the time, right now, there is about 11,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. And this doesn't include Palestinians from Gaza who are held at detention camps, like the notorious Tziri Timan detention center, or detention camp, where Palestinians are assaulted, sexually assaulted, um, raped, killed under torture, barely given any food, uh, punished for raising their hands or heads up. Um, so a considerable percentage of the Palestinian population has been incarcerated by Israel. Every day, Israel carries out raids into the West Bank to arrest more Palestinians. And in Gaza, it's like just yesterday, Israel released 10 people out of no one knows. Thousands of Palestinians from Gaza have been captured by Israel since October 7. And Israel always refused to release many of these prisoners. Some of them served 40 years in Israeli jails, including Nail Barouthi, who was released to Turkey as part of these exchanges that take place or used to take place between Israel and Hamas. Entire generations were lost behind bars. I have translated the 3 books on Palestinian prisoners, including child prisoners. Israel incarcerates as young as 6 and 7-year-old Palestinians. And the issue of administrative detention, which is a British law that allows Israel to hold Palestinians without charge or trial. So there are people who spend 15 years in Israeli jails without knowing why they're held. So it's a very serious problem or issue. Even when you talk about the last, I mean the final status uh, issues. One of them is the issue of prisoners, besides Jerusalem refugees, the wall, settlements. So the issue of prisoners is very important in the Palestinian community. And um, after October 7, Ben Gvir, who's the internal security minister, has been humiliating Palestinians, saying that they live in summer camps, they enjoy their lives. He only gives them 1 meal a day. They're tortured, beaten. Some of them, about 70, were killed under torture since October 7. No one talks about these people. And if you look at people who come out of prisons, including the people who came out yesterday, they're literally skeletons. But again, no one talks about them. Everybody is talking about Israeli hostages, as if Palestinian hostages or their lives matter less.
Absolutely. We very much see them as hostages as well, and that, that term prisoner almost does it an injustice given the true context and situation of how so many of them are taken, captured, and held for no known reason, or just completely blown out of proportion, ridiculous excuses. Um, and so thank you for sharing about those. I know that was one of the main reasons and efforts of Al-Aqsa flood was an exchange to get some of those thousands of Palestinian hostages who were being held unjustly and inhumanely and being tortured, some to death, as you said. Um, so thank you for going into that. I also want to ask, what do you wish Americans specifically understood about Gaza that mainstream media often misses or doesn't portray accurately?
It's important for Americans to know that what's happening in Gaza never started on October 7th. As I explained, it started even before 1948. It started with the British colonization of Palestine in 1917 and the mass expulsion of Palestinians at gunpoint in 1948. That paved the way for the establishment of Israel. The question of Gaza is a question of refugees, and it's important for them also to understand that this genocide wouldn't happen without American military, political, diplomatic, and economic aid to Israel. So the US tax dollar is being used to carry out the genocide in Gaza, and this has to stop. Um, and Americans should know that what's happening in Gaza is not just a foreign policy issue, it's something that matters at home, and it wouldn't happen without the United States enabling it to happen and giving Israel the green light. Even Israeli hostages would be released tomorrow, I would say, if the United States tells Netanyahu enough is enough, end this genocide now. Um, and again, or if you look at all these weapons, F-35s, F-16s, and they're given to Israel by mostly the United States. Um, so when you see explosions taking place in Gaza, this, these are American explosions, American weapons given to Israel. So the US plays a major role in helping Israel in this regard. And it can end this atrocity right now if Trump tells Netanyahu, game over, end it now.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We've been trying as part of our protests to sort of connect the dots for Americans and show them that this is not just an issue that's happening in a different country that has nothing to do with us, but that essentially none of this would be possible without US tax dollars and weapons and our government greenlighting this entire thing and saying, yes, that, this is what we want as well. And so we're really trying to get Americans to understand that and also to even take it further because not all Americans, unfortunately, are even empathetic enough to care. So we try to connect the dots even further and say, well, we're spending all of this money to genocide an indigenous population. And because we are doing that, because our policies are choosing that and prioritizing that, we do not have access to healthcare. We do not have access to higher education or even quality lower education. We do not have access to housing. Our homeless population in the US is skyrocketing. And so we're trying to help connect those dots that our tax dollars are being used for colonial, imperial violence around the world. And that's benefiting only the billionaire class in the West and the capitalists of the West. And it's not actually benefiting everyday American citizens. So we're trying to really help connect those dots. And I appreciate you, speaking to that. Because as you know, the mainstream media in the United States has done similar to what they did during 9/11, and they really have a very biased, honestly, highly inaccurate portrayal of what's been going on and what even happened on October 7th and since then. So yeah, that's been really important for us to sort of bust those myths and bring the real truth to the people and inspire them to be bringing that truth to their representatives and demanding that they change their positions. So my next question is, what keeps you hopeful in the face of genocide and ethnic cleansing? And what moments of resilience in Gaza stand out to you? I know we touched on this briefly, but if there's anything else.
I think what keeps me hopeful is that hope probably is the only thing that we have now left. And if we lose it, we lose everything. We lost our homes, we lost our families, our friends, our memories. And we cling on to hope because we are not exception to history. There are many nations who suffered throughout history and they emerged victorious. And so will the Palestinian people in Gaza will emerge victorious. In Ireland, South Africa, and Vietnam, and many other examples in history in Algeria. Also, I read something very interesting recently saying that hope is the last thing that dies in the Palestinian Gaza. And Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish says hope is the disease that Palestinians cannot be cured from. So we're not exception to history. And as our Irish fellows say, our day will come. So this is what we say, our day will come. And what keeps us also hopeful is that we're not oppressing any nation. We're being oppressed. This is very important. So we are on the right side of history. God forbids that we're oppressing another nation. And if so, then we will be remembered in a very bad way in history books. But again, we also wish this doesn't happen to us. Um, I see also intersectional solidarity building for the people of Gaza. I see all these people taking to the streets for almost 2 years. And I see that the people of Gaza having given up, although they live under unbelievable conditions and circumstances. This gives me hope. And as Irish hunger striker Bobby Sands say, our revenge will be the laughter of our children. We want to serve justice to our people, to our children, so that future generations do not experience what we've experienced. And having hope is the only way to do this. We sometimes feel that we lost hope in politicians, but we never lose hope in people. And people are the ones who force politicians and governments to change their policies. If you look at the change in policy all over the world, and like just imagine that this would be the case in October 2023, you wouldn't believe it. But now it's happening. Even Israel's friends, they cannot defend it. It's too much for them. So we will continue to be hopeful, and we just pray that the people of Gaza will see the day Palestine will be free, and that they will not only be remembered at museums, that they will become more than a memory, that we can save them now rather than remembering them when they're gone.
Yeah, I think that that part is so important, that we try to save every life now. And like you've said it multiple times, this could end today. This could end right now. And that's really important. And thank you for sharing about the hope. I know for a lot of us outside of Gaza who maybe have never even been to the Middle East, but our hearts have changed and we feel that we've become poetically Palestinian, and we can't stop until Palestine is free. I know that it's had such an effect on so many people. The courage and the humility of the Palestinians sharing their stories, the most horrifying stories of their family members, but sharing them with the world to move people to stop this. And so, yeah, I think we've felt really moved, and it's really important that we hold on to hope, that if Palestinians are not giving up hope, we must not give up hope, that we must hold on to it and keep pushing. Like you said, there are so many examples throughout history that show us that hope is valid and that we really can see justice happen. And in that vein, I want to ask you a question that we're wanting to ask all of our speakers. There's a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is a famous civil rights activist in the US. He said, "Peace is not the absence of tension, but the presence of justice." And in that spirit, what does justice for Palestinians look like to you?
I felt this quote when I visited Belfast in North Ireland 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. I saw the wall dividing the Republican and loyalist areas. So I saw the tension there, but again, I saw the peace. Somehow there's a relative peace after the Good Friday Agreement. And I also read the poetry, the poem of Dr. Rifat Al on the walls, the mural, like decorating a very big wall on the other side of the road from the Sinn Féin headquarters. If I must die, you must live to tell my story. For me, justice is to have equal rights, to be treated with dignity, to have political rights, to go to school without feeling that I might not come back, um, to see my West Bank family in Palestine, not outside Palestine, and to bring war criminals, people who were involved in these crimes, uh, to account. Um, I think it's a very powerful experience when victims see their own victimizers brought to justice. And this is what I want to see, not just the freedom for Palestine, which is essential, but also to bring to account those who carried out these atrocities and crimes. Uh, because if, again, the genocide is allowed to happen in Gaza, it will not stop in Gaza. And making sure that those who carry out the genocide are brought to justice will make sure that this injustice will not happen anywhere else. Again, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Um, so we're not like, we do not have really like big dreams. We just want to live a normal life. That's our dream. Um, just I want to visit my aunts in the West Bank. I haven't seen them for decades. Uh, I want to go to the market, to go to school without fearing that I might not come back. And I want to choose my own representative, to speak my own mind, and to travel freely and to have access, like basic human rights, to food and water, and that people next door do not have more access to food and water just because they were born on the other side of the border or they have a different color or religion.
Yes, yes, we want all of those things as well, and these people responsible held to account, like you said, and it's just basic human rights. It's so mind-boggling that this is so controversial, especially to a country like the United States that claims to be, such a pillar of human rights in the world and, a leading democracy. And it's just so frustrating and despicable, frankly. So yes, we're definitely needing justice, not just peace without justice. There's no peace unless there's justice. Um, okay, I want to move on to, we have two more questions before we wrap up. And this question you sort of touched on earlier, but I wanted to just kind of give you another opportunity and to kind of make sure our audience is aware that you are a co-author of a book that you said is coming out soon in just a couple weeks. And so I'd love for you to just share what inspired the book and what readers can expect to learn from it.
As I said, the AFSC has a long history in Palestine, especially in Gaza. And if you look at the AFSC archives, you will find AFSC workers, aid workers helping Palestinians in 1948 in Gaza. It's the same story that's happening today, people being displaced, internally displaced. And we felt that it's very important to document this experience, especially that 95% of people in Gaza have suffered from displacement. And this is a very important experience at a very important juncture in history, in Palestinian history. And we just spoke to people on the ground, educators, someone who runs two pharmacies, a child who brought a trampoline into an UNRWA school to entertain children, but also to generate income for his family. A high school student was very smart who lost her education in school and ended up as a vendor, also to survive and support her family. A Palestinian elder who survived Nakba became a refugee the second time in his life. What it feels to be displaced. A woman who cares for her children after their father was killed. So we want people to understand this experience of displacement. You can read a lot of statistics and reports about displacement that come every week out of Gaza by international organizations. But I think it's the human touch, the personal story that moves people the most. What it feels to be a mom in Gaza today, what it feels to be an educator in Gaza these days, what it feels to be a student in Gaza these days and having to move sometimes 30 times because of Israeli bombardment and evacuation orders. How do you manage? How do you take a shower? Um, how do you buy food? What keeps you hopeful? How do you feel leaving your, home and memories behind and having to move? What do you pack? What do you take with you? So this like whole experience of being displaced, being refugee, being internally displaced is very important, and we wanted Palestinians in Gaza to tell it as they feel. So we interviewed 27 people. As I said, we published the book initially in Malaysia, and now it's being published by Haymarket in the United States. And we want people to order the book and read these experiences, and we want to change their hearts and minds. These are ordinary people on the ground. We want them to connect through these stories with these people and feel that these are, Palestinians. These are fellow humans who are being tortured for no reason for 2 years. And we want this book to contribute to the change taking place in the world. So, not just reading these stories, but turning this experience, what we learn from these stories into political action, into rage that will change the lives of these people. We want as many as people to read these stories. We want to turn them into different productions, translate them into different languages. And this is just a fracture of the whole experience. It's only 27 stories. We have 2 million stories out of Gaza, and we will not stop at 27. Um, we're always publishing more stories. We're engaging with people, interviewing people in Gaza, writing about them, and we plan to do more than that.
Awesome. So, can you say the title of the book one more time?
Displaced in Gaza,
Displaced in Gaza,
stories from the Gaza genocide.
Stories from the Gaza Genocide. And where can people pre-order or buy this book?
It's on the Haymarket website. Haymarket is the publisher, and people can find it and order it. And now there is a 40% discount. So please make sure that you order it, you gift it to your family and friends.
Mhm.
We just, we want to make some noise here,
Mhm.
um, hoping that this will lead to change.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that we have a QR code at our presentation for our audience to find the book, and we'll make sure that they have access to buy it because I think that's important for our community to read these stories. So our last question we have for you today is that if someone from the audience wants to take meaningful action after learning from your talk today, what steps should they take first?
Again, we need to get politicians to move. So education is very important. Educate people around you, but also get politicians to move and push for politicians who have commitment to human rights to be elected. Bring your politician to account. Call them, write to them, protest. Never give up. This is building up, and we will get there. So continue to protest, continue to amplify Palestinian voices, continue to write, continue to educate people around you. Um, as I said, we're building a movement, and every step every action matters. You might not see it now, but it's building up. We're getting there. And I hope that we will see it within our lifetime very soon. Um, and again, politicians have historically been very slow and have been historically been on the wrong side of history. If you look at Nelson Mandela was listed as a terrorist up until 1998 in the United States, even after he became a president of South Africa. But there are a lot of people who supported the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa within the United States, which eventually pushed the US government to change its policy. So continue making some noise, as Malcolm X said early in life. I learned that if I wanted to get something, I needed to make some noise. And Rafat loved Malcolm X a lot. He gave talks about him in Gaza. And a lot of Palestinians read the autobiography of Malcolm X in Gaza. And in fact, Malcolm X himself visited Gaza in 1959. Um, so just make some noise, keep making some noise, take action, speak everywhere. If you're on campus, speak to your college students. If you're a lecturer, if you're a student, speak to your classmates. If you're on the street, dis distribute flyers. If you're on social media, write, tweet. Like everybody is important in this movement.
Yes, thank you for those. We often tell we have a handout, and we in the US there's an app that's called the Five Calls app, and it's very easy to download, and right away you plug in your address and it will connect you with your two senators and your congressperson. And it gives you their phone number, and they even provide a script that you can use if you're not sure what to say. But they have this issue about a ceasefire, an arms embargo, opening the borders, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be very accessible for Americans to download that app and be calling their representatives every day. I know some people feel quite intimidated to call. I'll say to them, you can call after hours and just leave a message. Make sure you state your name and your address so that they know that you're a constituent, because they care very much about their specific voters and constituents. But share that and then tell them what you want, and you can leave a message if you're feeling, intimidated to call them directly. But you can also call during the day, and their staff are very friendly and trained and will answer the phone, and you can talk to them about this issue. And that's something we encourage people to do daily. If, do it every day, like your family were in Gaza and they depended on it. And we also bring up the BDS, the boycott, divest, sanctions, and we encourage people to not buy products that are supporting economically the Israeli government or weapons manufacturers, because we think that there's a lot of power in boycotting and financially trying to make this whole genocide financially unfeasible, as a way to pressure them to stop. So we share about those things as well, and we continue our protest every single week. We protest for this, and so we just want to encourage people in our community, those who are listening in Los Alamos, you can join us Saturdays at 11 a.m. at Ashley Pond to protest for this. So thank you so much for talking with us today. Addie, Kelly, Jody, do you have anything you want to share before I wrap up? You can unmute.
May I say thank you? Thank you for joining us. And for me, the most important thing you have said is hope. So thank you for offering us hope.
Yes. Yes, I want to echo that, Jody. Thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with us. This is going to be shown to our community in a couple of weeks, and it means so much to us. I really, Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you for being here today and for the opportunity to speak to your community.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jamal. We are deeply grateful for your time, your insights, and your willingness to share both your expertise and your lived experience with us today. Your voice brings clarity to issues that are so often misunderstood or overlooked, and it reminds us of the urgent need for justice and humanity in Gaza and beyond. On behalf of everyone listening, thank you for your work, for your courage, and for helping us better understand the realities faced by Palestinian people, both in Gaza and the West Bank. It has been an honor to learn from you, and we look forward to carrying these lessons with us as we continue the conversation and we work towards peace and justice and dignity for all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.